Welcome to Volleyball State, your look at volleyball in 6 rotations. Here are your hosts, Jeff Sheldon and Lincoln Arneal.
Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations and a proud part of the Hurrdat Sports family. I'm Jeff Sheldon.
And I'm Lincoln Arneal.
Today, we get to talk with the voice of American volleyball on television, Paul Sunderland. We talk with Paul about everything from the state of the college game today, Team USA programs, broadcasting the Olympics, and more. Plus, Nebraska runs its winning streak to 17 matches, but the Huskers are not exactly playing champagne volleyball leading into this week's huge match at Wisconsin. The Badgers themselves, they're rolling after dismantling Purdue on Saturday. Number 1, Pitt wins one of the ACC matches of the year this weekend, and Texas finally stumbles against their biggest rival. And there is officially now a vacancy to coach the United States women's national team. Lincoln and I are in no way qualified to speculate about candidates for that job, but that's not going to stop us. That's all coming up later. Lincoln, first, tell the folks how they can interact with us in all the digital spaces.
Yes, join the program. You can help us out. Follow the show at Volleyball Pod on Twitter and TikTok. We also have an email account, volleyballstate@gmail.com. Send in questions, inquiries, things like that. You can follow me on Twitter at Lincoln_VB. I also write daily coverage of Nebraska volleyball at Huskers Illustrated. I put out a weekly Substack about all the news and happenings about college volleyball, and I do video recaps on YouTube. So all of the content you could possibly want, besides listening to our great insights and wisdom. So
that's right.
Great.
Follow us at Volleyball Pod. You can find me at by Jeff Sheldon. I gotta say, Lincoln, just with the matches this past week, some of the commenters on our Volleyball Pod Twitter account, we're getting kind of spicy.
Good.
There's some very opinionated folks on there wanting to talk about state of the Huskers and what they feel Nebraska should be doing, though I feel like if there were some easy solutions to some of these questions, they would have happened by now. So we're going to talk about the Huskers, what's going well, what's not going well, coming up in just a little bit. But Lincoln, let us know what everything coming up on Volleyball State this week is.
Yes, we will start off rotation 1 doing our recaps of Nebraska's wins over Illinois in Michigan. Then rotation 2, we will shift to the Big Ten recaps. Lots of big matches going on there. Rotation 3, we've already previewed a little bit, but there's a lot of big matches, a lot of ranked versus ranked, a lot of upsets that happened across the nation. Rotation 4 will be our interview with Paul Sunderland. Rotation 5 will get into some news about volleyball, some happenings, some postseason information, as well as the USA Volleyball. And then we will look ahead in rotation 6. Nebraska's facing number 8 Wisconsin, and also going to Northwestern. So the gauntlet of November begins next week for the Huskers. So we will talk about what is in store. So that's where we're going. But let's get to rotation 1.
That's right. Nebraska played Illinois and Michigan this past week, ran their winning streak to 17 matches, swept Illinois, took down Michigan in 4, but it wasn't as easy as some of that might indicate. Nebraska sweeps Illinois 25-17, 25-19, but then has to go to extra points and win game 3, 28-26. Huskers had a really good offensive night. This was on Friday night. Nebraska hit 339. It was their 4th consecutive match north of 300. So you wouldn't know that they were about to struggle the next night against Michigan, but against Illinois, Merritt Beeson, big night, 13 kills. Also, big night from the service line for the senior opposite hitter. She had 4 aces, and she had 3 more against Michigan, so she had a 7-ace weekend for Merritt Beeson. Not bad. Andy Jackson also had an All-American type night with 11 kills, hit 667 on just 15 swings, and also added 6 blocks. And this was we got good Bergen Riley on Friday night. Riley had a double-double, 40 assists, 10 digs, ran the offense really well against Illinois. And Nebraska, I won't say cruises to a sweep, but cruises 2/3 of the way to the sweep and then kind of white knuckles it there to the end.
Yeah, you talk about how well the offense, I mean, really it was those first 2 sets, and Nebraska hit 475 over those first 2 and just had 4 hitting errors combined in that third set. I think you've seen this not really happen that much this year, but Nebraska kind of says, oh, we got this team. We're of much superior talent than the other opposition. and they let off a little bit too, and that opens a window. And Illinois, they kind of took advantage really from the get-go. They scored the first 3 points of that third set. And really, that was kind of the most interesting part of the match too. So we can spend a little more time going play by play on that. And that was really, it was a game of runs as well too. I mean, Illinois scored the first 3. Nebraska answered with a 4-0 run. Illinois had a 4-0 run. Nebraska had a 3-0 run. Then they're up 15-13 after another 4-0 run, and then it really kind of settled into a slugfest really. And Illinois ended up tying it. It was at 19-19 and 20-20. So then it got a little tighter after that.
Illinois is not a contender for the Big Ten title, but I came away with the same feeling about them on Friday night as I did when Nebraska beat them up in Champaign in early October, which is this isn't a bad team. Illinois is a pretty good team. They're going to contend, I think, for the tournament this year. They actually swept Michigan at Michigan. I can't remember if that was last weekend or 2 weekends ago, but like Illinois, when they put it together, they can play some good volleyball. They're a tough serving team. And when you've got Raina Terry, they're a great outside hitter. You always have a chance. And it was Raina Terry who kind of asserted herself in game 3 to put Illinois in a position, at least for a while, to fight off the sweep. I'm going to pick up game 3 where Illinois actually led late in this one. They led at 21-20, I think 22-21, and maybe again at 23-22. The teams were trading side outs all the way up to the point Illinois had a set point to extend this to 4. They're up 24-23. Merritt Beeson comes in and gets a kill to tie it at 24. And then Harper Murray and Andy Jackson with a block to give the Huskers a match point up 25-24. But Illinois, again, wouldn't go quietly. Terry with 2 more kills in extra points as the teams were trading side outs. Andy Jackson finally gets a kill to put Nebraska up 27-26. And that put Harper Murray back at the service line. And it was one of her best serves of the night. She served short to Illinois' libero, who really couldn't handle it that well, forced an overpass. Nebraska essentially gets a free ball back, and Bergen Riley runs Andy Jackson on the slide in transition, who puts it away. Nebraska holds on for the sweep 28-26 in game 3. But the offense in Nebraska hit 475 over the first 2 sets against Illinois, went down below 200, hit 167 with 8 hitting errors in game 3. And then you had Raina Terry doing her on the other side for Illinois, had 6 kills in game 3. She finished with a match high 15 for Illinois. But, Lincoln, we see this from time to time. We saw it a lot on Saturday against Michigan. Sometimes Nebraska's offense just kind of goes in the tank for a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know, again, it's that lack of aggression, loses the sharpness of their attacks. They get a little bit sloppy as well, too. I mean, Illinois wasn't really, they're doing a little bit of defense, but, they only had 1 block that third set, too. So it was a lot of unforced errors and just picking the wrong angles or just mishitting balls or trying to force it. So, Illinois also started a little bit too. The teams had combined 11 errors in the first 2, and then Illinois had 9. Nebraska, like you said, had 8 in the third set alone too. So Illinois also struggled to hit 137 in that third set. So both teams were, I don't know, hitting the wall a little bit or just kind of playing a little.
What you see too, as you get later in the match, is the adjustments start to happen.
Yeah,
you can change the way you're blocking. You can change how your defense lines up, and that means you're either going to get blocked or offense hitters. A lot of times are trying to be a little too perfect, and they crank a ball wide or out of bounds into the antenna. Nebraska just hasn't for a little while been able to put together 3 straight really good offensive sets. And again, we go back to that second outside hitter position. Taylor Landfair, they're continuing to give her kind of the extended audition, or she's earning that spot in practice. I think she's started 4, if not 6 straight matches now against Illinois. She had 4 kills, 2 errors on 16 attempts. So only a quarter of her swings went down for kills. They brought in Lindsey Krause in game 3. She had 3 kills, 2 errors on her 6 swings. Combined, that position hits 136 against Illinois. And those struggles would continue again on Saturday against Michigan. But Nebraska ends up holding on to beat Illinois, gets the sweep. And that's the Huskers' 16th straight win on Friday night.
Yeah, it's strange that no matter who's starting, Landfair had a good weekend last weekend, but back to kind of reverted to form here. And like you said, she's getting every single opportunity to own that position. And just the shot selection is average at best. Like if she's hitting hard, she's hitting opposite corner where the other team's libero is just camping out and getting a lot of easy digs. And I thought she got a little tip happy this weekend, and it just wasn't the recipe for success.
Well, what I noticed, especially on Saturday against Michigan, she loves to hit a sharp cross, and I forget what zone that is. I'm sorry. Please at me. All of our coaches out there that know what zone that is, but the sharp cross to the shallow corner, she tried to hit that a couple times, and she's tall enough that she can hit it, but she was burying it in the net a few times. The other thing, you kind of see about Landfair, John Cook had said they're working on her footwork at the start of the season. She doesn't exactly hustle off the net really aggressively in transition, so that then you can present yourself to come forward for an attack. And a lot of times you hear coaches talk about middles need to do that. If they're getting up to block, then they need to, take 3 explosive steps back or so that then they can come forward and attack in transition. Taylor Landfair could use some of those same lessons, I think, sometimes on getting off the net after blocking so that she can then explode forward for attack. Because otherwise, what I'm noticing is the set's going behind her a little bit, and that's not always the setter's fault. Like, as a hitter, you've got to put yourself in position to swing. And when she's reaching back for balls, she's not getting a lot of velocity on him, and it's just turning into an easy transition chance for the other team. So, like I said at the top of the show, if there was a silver bullet here for Nebraska to figure out there's an outside hitter position, they probably would have fired it already. This is not a match coming up against Wisconsin where you want to attack tentatively and tip and you got their block to deal with, but Nebraska needs to attack aggressively and wisely against the block that Wisconsin is going to put up there for them next week.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a baseball analogy. If you're tipping and hitting roll shots, it's like throwing a curveball a changeup time and time again too. And if you throw your changeup too often, it becomes just a meatball down the middle that the other teams can do that. And if you try to tip and roll too much, it becomes an easy in transition offense for the other team too. So they need to figure out how to be more aggressive and have those off-speed shots be the change of pace and not the normal attack for the outside hitters.
If all you throw is changeups, all it means is you have a really bad fastball.
Yeah.
So, I think Nebraska, again, I feel like I say this a lot, like just they need to tool better. They need to be able to hit high hands better. They need to tool the block better. Harper Murray's really come on in the versatility of her shots. She tipped a lot against Michigan, but landed a lot of them on Saturday. And maybe we just ought to ease into the Michigan match now. But this was another match where Nebraska struggled offensively. We won't bury the lead. Nebraska wins this match. They dropped the first set to Michigan 28-26. In a set that I was there for the first half of the match on Saturday, and it just kind of looked like a mess. Passing especially. Huskers sort of pulled themselves together in game 2 and 3. They win game 2, 25-17, win game 3, 25-11 in the best set that they played all weekend. And then kind of had to white knuckle it again to the end. Merritt Beeson takes over late, and Nebraska wins game 4 and the match 25-21. But Nebraska hits just 206 against Michigan on Saturday. It's Nebraska's lowest hitting percentage since the loss to SMU, where they were down at 171. And it's the second lowest hitting percentage Nebraska's had all year. Nebraska wins despite this.
Yeah.
Thanks to a lot of Michigan errors and, getting the kills when they needed to at the right time. But, Lincoln, what I was I'm sorry, I'm going to stop filibustering here for you for a second, but it felt like when I was watching live, it was like 20 rallies into the match before Nebraska got a clean kill. And I couldn't tell you when they got their first ball side out in this match.
Yeah, I was going to mention they hit 206, but that was with one of the sets where they hit 520, and the other 3 sets were 154, 152, 103. So it was not a great offense. Yeah, but it started with that passing too, and then when they did get good passes, you mentioned the good and bad of Berg Riley. This was not one of her highlight reel matches too. I mean, yes, she was getting pulled off the net a lot, had to do a lot of work around the 10-foot line, but it was just the selection and the placement wasn't what it usually be. Was it what we expect from her, kind of see for her in a lot of matches too. And I don't know if that was because, we mentioned the Illinois match too. That was a very big emotional match for her because she was playing against her sister for the last time in their college careers,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of family. So there's a lot of things going on outside of the match that probably emotionally draining and made the significance of that. So then to have to bounce back the next night
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough ask to do. And I think that, I don't know if that's just lingering hangover from everything that happened Friday night, that she was not up to her usual self on Saturday night.
Well, you can a couple things about that. I think the passing in game one, the passing to start the match was not great. Michigan is a really good serving team, and they didn't ace Nebraska at all. But as we talk about a lot, serving is about more than aces and errors. You have to look at the sort of good pass percentage you're able to pass off a team serve to see how good of a serving team they are. And I don't have those numbers. I haven't, hacked my way into volleyball metrics or volumetrics yet this weekend. Avid's got to help us out there. But Bergen Riley was constantly running back to the 10-foot line. Michigan was serving Harper Murray really well. And then that can throw off a setter's rhythm. Like if you're not getting a good pass and everything has to be, back behind the 10-foot line, that can sort of shake your rhythm and your confidence for the rest of the match. If you want to see a key as to, a little cheat code as to how good of a match a setter's having, look at what their middles are doing. And Nebraska's middles really struggled on their stat line this match when they usually don't. Andy Jackson had 10 kills and 5 errors, so she hit below 300 for one of the few times all year. Rebecca Alec, 5 kills, 4 errors. And that's not all going to be on a setter, but if you're not connecting with your middles, if you're setting them into some tight spots, then that can be another sign that you're just a little bit off. And then even offensively, when Riley was attacking, it's not often you see a setter commit attack errors by hitting the ball out of bounds. She yanked a couple of setter dumps. She's trying to go to that short corner and she sent it wide a few times. It just felt like everyone was kind of pressing against Michigan. And despite all that, they had their chances, Lincoln, to win game one. Nebraska was up 24-23 and 25-24, but they just couldn't put Michigan away. Michigan saved both with kills. And then one of those attack errors from Bergen Riley put Michigan up 26-25. And Michigan finally wins it 28-26 on kills by Allison Jacobs and Valentina Valette, who are really the only 2 players Michigan ever sets. Like they're very outside heavy, and Jacobs coming into the match is one of the biggest, one of the Big Ten leaders in kills, and she had 7 kills in game one.
Yeah. Jacobs finished with 40 attacks. Valette had 39 too. So there's 80 or 79 of their 133 attacks came from their 2 pin hitters. So just that. And Michigan also struggled a bit too. They hit, the 297 that first set, but overall 150 for the match. So, but they took advantage. Nebraska made a couple key errors, and they took advantage of that. And really, even especially to get into Michigan, Michigan was leading 22-19, and it looked like they're going to run. It was just a Herculean effort for Nebraska to even fight back to get those set points. So, but I think that again, it shows Nebraska can perform well, and I think. You saw that to start the second set. We'll kind of transition to the second game. To me, the aggression flipped a little bit from the service line too. And again, the 2 players that had the best offensive nights also got it going serving. Merritt Beeson comes out, serves a 5-0 run. They have misses a serve. Michigan scores a point. Then Harper Murray steps back. She has a 5-0 run too. They both had Murray had a couple aces. Beeson had 1 ace. And that to me, that kind of changed their aggressiveness too and really set them up. They were up 11-4 in that second set. And that, even though the hitting percentages were fairly close, was at 152 there.
Both were bad.
Both were bad.
But well, and I think Nebraska has to serve aggressively because they're not the type of blocking team that Wisconsin is, and few teams are, but just like last year we talked about, Nebraska's not an elite blocking team. I don't think they're an elite blocking team this year. And so they can't just lollipop a serve over and let other teams get in system, or else they get in trouble. And they served 4 aces in game 2 and won the set despite having just 10 kills. So that means they had to find 15 points other ways. Michigan also helped them out with that, with 4 service errors. Michigan becomes the last team to come into the Devaney Center and just forget how to serve. Go ahead.
Valette she's one of a very aggressive serve. She has a very wicked jump serve. It seems like every other team has a jump serve except for Nebraska. And Nebraska did amazing against her. She only served 11 times. She missed 4 of them. And I don't think Nebraska handled her serves for the most part. I don't remember any overpasses. I mean, there might have been Michigan might get a point, but it wasn't because of Nebraska was struggled to handle her serve. So
Olivia Mouth did a really good job when she was able to get in and handle some of those serves from Valentina Valette, because they're all, if she could keep them out of the net, they were all, top spin bombs that were going to hit inside the back line if somebody couldn't handle them. And Nebraska, to their credit, really, really did.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michigan finished with 14 service errors for the entire match and 0 aces. So the first time they've been shut out all season long for not recording an ace. So they're a decent serving team, but Nebraska is an elite serve reception team.
Game 3, Nebraska finally gets the offense going. Huskers hit 520 in the third set, put it away early. They immediately jumped out to an 8-2 lead behind a couple of Merritt Beeson kills. Huskers were up 18-10, which is itself a pretty healthy advantage. But then they pulled away again, ended the set on a 7-1 run to win this 25-11 with 3 late Harper Murray kills. You think, all right, Huskers are rolling. Game 4 is going to be a breeze. And in Game 4, Nebraska hits 103, their worst hitting percentage of the night. 11 hitting errors for Nebraska. And, I watched the end of this match, went back and rewatched it, and you're like, how did Michigan not end up forcing this to a fifth set? They were led 18-15 after Taylor Landfair's final swing of the night, which was hitting into a double block. And that's when Nebraska finally makes the switch. They take out Taylor Landfair. They bring in Lindsey Krause. And Michigan just couldn't really stand the prosperity at that point by committing a slew of serve or hitting errors.
Yeah. And it was interesting when Krause came in, there was a cheer amongst the crowd. Like, you don't really, because you're cheering against Landfair, but you're cheering for Krause. But there was they were excited. And that was just a little bit of energy that Nebraska needed. And that really kind of changed the tenor on their side of the net, too. And they run off. Krause checks in. They run off 4 straight points, and she really didn't have anything to do with any of those points. Or she had a kill on one, I should say. But I mean, a service error, a hitting error by Michigan, and then a block with the other 3. So really, it changed the energy and momentum a little bit just by awakening the crowd and getting Krause in there. And
I don't think the crowd is. I don't think anyone's cheering against Taylor Landfair.
They're cheering for Krause. They just wanted to give her a shot. I should say.
I mean, people, though, recognize that kind of what Lindsey Krause's role has been on the team this year and how she's been fighting for a spot. She's the local player, and she's a really good teammate. Everyone has been familiar with her for the last 4 years. And at the same time, Taylor Landfair had 5 kills and 6 errors on 22 swings against Michigan. So, there's a little bit of a relief maybe when it's like, hey, we're acknowledging maybe that this isn't working and we're going to try something else. Yeah. So Krause comes in, does get a kill. Nebraska ends up tying it 20-20 after trailing 18-15. Rebecca Alec gets a kill to put Nebraska up 21-20. And from then on, it's Mama Bear, Merritt Beeson. Bergen Riley says, you know what, enough of this balance stuff. We're just going to set Merritt. And she comes through. She had struggled earlier in the match, but she did not struggle late. She put away Nebraska's last 4 kills, did have a hitting error late, but at that point, it was pretty academic. Nebraska was up, I think, 24-21 at that time. And Beeson puts it away on match point. Huskers have now won 16 straight matches over the Michigan Wolverines, haven't lost since a 2014 match in Ann Arbor. So Michigan and Illinois are both teams that I feel like, even when they go on the road, Nebraska always just kind of has figured out and usually, plays pretty well. And was able to grind to wins this weekend, even when they weren't exactly playing their best.
Yeah, this to me was the Merritt Beeson and Harper Murray. They really stepped up, carried the load. I mean, like you said earlier, they had 16, 17 kills for them. Both hit above 300 individually. So just great effort by them to carry. And they both had 3 aces too. I mean, they kind of, again, it started at the beginning of that second set. Both of them had a pair of that in the second, and then Beeson added another one, Murray had another one. So it was overcoming errors. They had 27 was the second highest errors for the season. I think the other one was a 5-set. Was it Purdue or I forget which match it was, but it was the second highest total of errors that Nebraska's had this year.
27 hitting errors against Michigan, 27 also in the 5-set win over Creighton, and then season high 31 as I look at my stats here against Purdue. You were correct.
Yes, I do remember random stats every now and then. But
Nebraska doesn't need to hit 300 to win a match, I don't think. But like I don't think you can win a lot of matches hitting 206. Like even if it was just around 250, and up until this weekend, Nebraska was leading the Big Ten in hitting percentage, and they've dropped down a little bit. I think this weekend dropped them 6 points in their season hitting percentage. But just, what is that really? That's 2 fewer errors and 2 more kills in a match potentially, or maybe 3 in that category. And that's Bergen Riley not dumping a setter dump out of bounds, or Rebecca Alec, who gets a little too energetic, it feels like, for her own good sometimes, going up to hit an overpass and yanking it wide, or hitting it 2 feet long when no one else is in the backcourt. It's just those like, how did you hit that out when the court is open, that gets you to a level that you need to get to.
But again, Nebraska finished with a victory. They finished the first half of the Big Ten season with 10-0, perfect. So like we said, the gauntlet begins now. 20-1 is again, John Cook said, every win in the Big Ten is a good win. So definitely, I mean, there's definite room for improvement. They are back-to-back nights. You'd like to see them respond a little bit better. They did the first time when they dominated down Ohio State team, but Michigan's a little frisky. I think that they've really surprised the team.
They've got some good players, and they were real bad last year, and they're going to go to the tournament probably this year. So that's a really great turnaround.
And they need a couple marquee they need upset. Like, and they need a good resume win. I mean, I don't know if they have anything on their record yet, but they need if they can knock off Purdue or Minnesota or an Oregon or something. I mean, I don't know if they're on the caliber. I mean, they also did go 4 sets with Wisconsin, a very similar match. They took the first set in extra points and then lost the next 3. But if they want to go to a tournament, they need to kind of a resume building win is what they're.
I was really impressed by Allison Jacobs too, their outside hitter, who had a match high 18 kills against Nebraska on Saturday. She's not that tall. What's she, like 5'10"? And she didn't play last year. She was out with a medical red shirt,
shoulder injury.
She was really impressive. She's got a variety of shots. She knows how to tool. You kind of have to when you're only 5'10". And I was really impressed by her. So Michigan's got some pieces there. Like you said, they need to maybe grab a statement win, but they're gonna probably be close to that 20 win threshold to get in the tournament.
Yeah, good on Erin Virtue. She's really built a good team in her second year at Michigan, and get Michigan. It's good. Michigan did qualify for a Final Four this century. So they have had some success. It'd be good to get them back there, and Erin Virtue's doing a good job. So,
and we're going to preview Nebraska's matches against Wisconsin and Northwestern coming up this weekend in rotation 6. But we are going to stick with the Badgers to start rotation 2, which is a look around the rest of the Big Ten Conference. And Wisconsin is playing well at the start of November, right when you want to start be playing well. They made a huge statement on Saturday. The Badgers ranked number 8, and that's going to go up on Monday. They sweep Purdue on the road, 25-20, 25-23, 25-13. And this wasn't in, tiny little Cracker Jack boiler box. This was in Mackey Arena in front of 15,000 people. Our guest coming up in a couple of rotations, Paul Sunderland, was on the call, and Wisconsin was dominant. They had 15 blocks in 3 sets against Purdue, and just really looked impressive.
Yeah, and it was a tight match to start off, but then all of a sudden, Charlie Furbringer goes to the service line, 12-0 run, kind of blew things open. It blew things open in that first set. Purdue fought back a little bit. I mean, it's 25-20 in that first set, but a 12-0 run in the first set against a frenzied crowd in Mackey. I mean, it's at a good excitement level. They had gold out, so a lot of people ready to go, and just to deflate that it's an impressive statement from them. Yeah, so I mean, the offense. This was a very, again, slugfest, lots of errors. Like you said, Wisconsin had a lot of blocks, and then Anna Smarek led the team with 12 kills, 10 from Franklin. So not a real offensive match, but Wisconsin has that big block that makes teams work a lot.
Wisconsin makes you earn every point. That's the thing that they do with their block. Like, very rarely are you going to see someone go off with a huge offensive night against Wisconsin. Eva Hudson had one for Purdue on Saturday, but she had half of their kills. Eva Hudson had 17 of Purdue's 33 kills. No one else had more than 5. They completely shut down Chloe Chacoin. And if you're a Nebraska fan and you watch Wisconsin's early season struggles, you had to know that Kelly Sheffield was going to start to put it together by the halfway point of Big Ten play. And of course, they're starting to play real well as soon as Nebraska pops up on the schedule.
For sure. We did mention that we'll follow up on their attendance record too. I mean, they had the capacity crowd, the same one that they tied the previous weekend against Indiana. John Cook saw that and immediately texted Nebraska AD Troy Dan and said, "We need to break this." So we asked him about it this week. He was also on the Kicking Back with the Cooks podcast. He says, we're going to take that record. So he's already planning to play a match at PBA next year, which I think has a capacity just over, 15-4 is what they could do, which is just going to start an arms race because then Wisconsin is going to play a Big Ten match at Kohl Center, or it's going to start an arms race for that.
They've been trying to get Cook to play a regular season match in PBA for a while. And all they had to do was play on his vanity by dangling another team's attendance record in front of him. Like, as soon as that happened, of course, that was going to be what flipped the switch in his mind. They're like, all right, fine, we'll play at PBA. And I don't know, it'll probably be against Iowa or somebody they feel like they have a good chance of beating. I don't know that they're going to go try to schedule the Purdue match in.
Well, that's what I appreciate about what Purdue played their biggest rival in Indiana, and then another big rival in a big match at Wisconsin. They went to an unfamiliar arena. So props to Purdue for not just getting the record for the record's sake. They tried to use the record.
Well, I think Nebraska should play like Creighton in PBA, but that doesn't fit the narrow definition of it has to be a Big Ten match to get this attendance record, so I imagine Nebraska is going to play like Maryland or Iowa.
Minnesota would be a good match there, I feel like.
Yeah, it would be great. And congrats to Kelly Sheffield, who became Wisconsin's all-time winningest coach this week when Wisconsin won on Thursday against Maryland. He's now won 306 games. I believe he surpassed his predecessor, Pete Waite, to become Wisconsin's all-time winningest coach, unless it was Cook, and I don't think he was there long enough to get
it. Not John Cook. Yeah, it was not John Cook. So he wasn't there long enough. But so we'll talk more about the Badgers later, but let's go to some other ones. Big upset. I don't know if anybody stayed up late. Was it?
I did not.
I
was
did.
So late.
I did. Big Ten after dark. Big fan. Michigan State they were winless in the Big Ten till they go out to LA, played number 16 USC, and did a reverse sweep. Won the third set 27-25. USC actually had 2 match points in that, failed to convert. Michigan State gets new life, wins the fourth set 25-20, and then pulls out the fifth set 15-13. Anderson had 26 kills for the Spartans, 12 digs, 5 blocks, just a really good. Nebraska saw what she can do, and just is a good player, but really stepped up against the Trojans. Allie Batenhorst had a great night. She had 23 kills, hit 357. So she's just really elevating her game in big matches. But USC did not have enough offense when it counted and couldn't close the door. And Michigan State keeps the hashtag Big Ten After Dark alive.
Yeah. The reason I didn't stay up late to watch that match is because it started after or just a little bit later than Penn State UCLA, which was earlier that night.
10 o'clock Central's when that USC Michigan State game started.
Yep. And so same city, same night, number 3 Penn State comes back to beat number 16 UC. It says USC in our show notes here. I'm pretty sure that's UCLA. Is that right?
No, that was last night. On a Saturday night they played.
There we go.
Yeah.
That one I didn't see. I was thinking about earlier in the week when they played UCLA. Number 3 Penn State on Saturday erases a 23-18 deficit in Game 4 to finish off USC 32-30. So USC goes winless at home this weekend. Jess Mruzek, 16 kills, 10 digs for the Nittany Lions. Cameron Hanna, 14 kills, and also had an ace on match point. Allie Batenhorst, another nice match for USC. It's pencil her in for double digits every single match now. She's got that top outside hitter role, and she's owning it. 16 kills for USC, but again, not enough. So rough weekend for the Trojans, or the women of Troy, lose to Michigan State and Penn State, who also picked up another win in LA. Was that Friday or was that Wednesday? I forget which, but they beat UCLA.
Yeah, I forget they had a double. They went Thursday, Saturday, but they won.
They won in 5. They had to go to a 5th set to beat UCLA earlier in the week.
Yeah. So, So speaking of,
we got another one.
yeah, speaking of that, we got another reverse sweep too. Sunday, Ohio State looked great the first two sets. Emily Londot's doing great stuff. Selman's out there getting kills. They win the first two sets. Look like they're about ready to do it. Minnesota rallies. They win the third set again. Again, the fun thing about volleyball. You get the momentum, switch the sides, and Minnesota comes back. They pull off a reverse sweep and win the fifth set, 15-10. Julie Hansen actually was the one big offensive weapon from they have a couple people capable of going off, whether it's Grote or Wooker or their middles. Melanie Schaffmaster does a great job with the offense, but it was Hansen had 21 kills, and Minnesota dominated the net and had 14 blocks. So big night for them. Worker did had 11 kills for them. Emily Londot finished with 21 kills, 13 digs, and Selman had 16 for Ohio State, which again, we'll talk about this in just a few minutes, but they're struggling. Just they're close. They had match point against Penn State and had Minnesota on their heels, ready for a knockout blow, and couldn't deliver it.
Absolutely. And like, how many times do we see this in volleyball where if you win games 1 and 2, but then you drop a tight game 3, it's like you didn't put the knife in Michael Myers when you had the chance. And now all of a sudden he's sitting up on the table and, oh my goodness, what do we do? Because he's got the knife now. Forgive my belated Halloween analogy, but like, you got to put teams away when you have the chance. And it's just another dagger loss for Ohio State this year. Buckeyes are now 1-9 in Big Ten play. And this is a program that's got one outstanding upperclassman outside hitter in Emily Londot, plus one of the best recruiting classes in the country this year. And it doesn't look like they're going to put it together this year and make the tournament, which is a bummer for Emily Londot. If you've watched her play these past few years in the Big Ten, she's really good, and you'd love to see a player like her in the NCAA tournament, because I bet they could probably win their opening match.
Yeah, for sure. So there's one more match. We're recording this Sunday afternoon. Northwestern and Indiana are playing later tonight, but that closes the door on the first half of the Big Ten schedule. I have the standings in front of us too. So Penn State, Nebraska tied for first place. Both went 10-0. Wisconsin is one game back, 9-1. In third place, Oregon's in fourth place at 8-2. And then you start getting Purdue, Minnesota tied for fifth, and there's a whole slew of teams. There's a huge middle. There's 4 teams tied for seventh. Washington, Michigan, USC, and Illinois are all 6-4. This again goes back to that. All these teams have a very good shot at making the tournament, but they need some resume. They need to knock off the 6 teams ahead of them, and kind of build that resume. Because I think I feel safe saying the top 6 teams in the league, they're looking good for the postseason for sure.
I don't have the RPI in front of me, but like, you could tell me the Big Ten was going to get 10 teams in the tournament this year, and I wouldn't, bat an eye that much at it.
Before this week, Illinois was 21. It changed. That was last Monday. I kind of look at that every Monday after each weekend. They were 21. So, and they're tied for 7th in the Big Ten. So
you've got kind of tied for 7th. You've got Washington, Michigan, USC, and Illinois are all at 6-4 in the league. Each of those teams can make the tournament. If they get, a signature win in November, and their RPIs up in the 40s, like they could definitely make the tournament.
Yeah, but I think after them, that's the last group. After them, there's a little bit of a drop off. No team is 5-5. UCLA is 4-6. Then you get the rest of the teams with losing records: Iowa, Indiana, Northwestern, Maryland. Ohio State is just, again, we talked about them previously. They should not be 1-9 in the Big Ten. And then Michigan State's also kind of, I felt, underachieved a little. And then Rutgers is going to Rutgers and be 0-10.
Yeah. So, we'll see who's going to play giant killer in the second half of the Big Ten schedule, who's going to seal the Big Ten title. And maybe, I think whoever wins the Big Ten, whether that's Nebraska, Penn State, or Wisconsin, which are probably, it's going to be from one of those 3 teams. It's going to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Big Ten could potentially have 2 number 1 seeds. Remind me, who did Wisconsin lose to? Did they lose to Penn State?
Minnesota. It was Minnesota.
That's right.
The first effort. So Wisconsin has, so just to set this up, Wisconsin has 2 games against Nebraska, and then 1 game against Penn State. Nebraska and Penn State also play one time on Black Friday. So that'll set up for a fun final weekend of the season.
All right. So let's move to rotation 3, which is a look around our country outside of our Big Ten bubble. And there was a great match this weekend, top 4 match, a Final Four match in the country. Number 1 Pitt held off number 4 Louisville. They went 5 and this was in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
On the Panthers' home court. Number 1 Pitt holds off Louisville 15-12 in the 5th. It feels like Louisville, has a number of these heartbreakers this year where they're fighting, they're scrapping, and they're not able to pull it off. Wasn't Stanford one of those? But Pitt comes out on top and cements their number 1 rating. 22 kills from the sophomore Olivia Babcock for Pittsburgh. Also 15 kills, 13 digs from Tori Stafford. If you're just looking at who has the best sophomore class in the country, it's probably Pitt this year, right up there with Nebraska, but you can't argue with what Tori Stafford and Olivia Babcock are doing. Anna DeBeer led Louisville with 22 kills and 14 digs. Charity Looper had 19 and 17. But again, not only is Pitt one of the best offensive teams in the country, they are one of the best blocking teams in the country, and they were able to make a few more plays to win this one 15-12 in the 5th.
Yeah. So Louisville, number 4, they have 3 losses on the year. Their 3 losses are to number 1 Pittsburgh, number 2 Nebraska, number 3 Penn State. So
that's right. They got swept in State College, didn't they? I believe that's right. I think they went up and played in Penn State and lost that. If you're gonna lose, you might. They're like Stanford or Kentucky. Every one of their losses is to like a Final Four caliber team.
So they get good and tested, ready for the postseason. But and then Louisville also may have had the toughest week of anybody because they went down to Dallas into the Snake Pit and played number 12 SMU. They ended up prevailing in 4 sets. SMU took that second set, but Louisville kind of won the other 3 sets a little comfortable. I mean, 14, 20, 21 of the 3 sets that they won. And really, so it was good win for them. Good bounce back. They didn't let the hangover from playing that Pitt match carry over to the next one. So good sign from them. Anna DeBeer finished 16 and 15. They hit 223 too. And then Maldonado Diaz, she put up 11 kills at 350. SMU they lost to Stanford at home, but they're if they could play all of their matches in Dallas, they could make the regional finals, and who knows what happens. They're tough because that's where they beat Pitt. That's where they beat Nebraska. But now Louisville kind of has broken that curtain a little bit too. So Shaime had 14 kills, 7 blocks for SMU. But the Mustangs hit 106. So just offense was a struggle. Louisville shut them down and did a good job on D.
Let's keep it in the Lone Star State with a match that we watched on Wednesday night. Texas A&M finally breaks the skid against number 7 Texas. A&M fights off 3 match points, comes back to beat Texas. I believe they also trailed 2-1. They beat Texas 18-16 in the 5th set. And we talk about Nebraska not playing champagne volleyball. This was like barely Miller High Life level of volleyball in game.
That's still pretty high.
It was not. Both teams kind of looked like they were just struggling to stay on their feet and stay in system in game 5, but A&M is able to make a couple more plays. Logan Lednicki, their left-handed opposite, led the way with 23 kills for the Aggies. Helmuth had 15. Maddie Skinner, 22 kills and hit 415 for Texas. Texas goes negative in game 5. Nobody else really helping her out as the Aggies were digging balls and getting good block touches. Texas A&M in Austin, in Gregory Gym, picks up the win. It was A&M's first win over Texas since 2010, and their first in Austin since 2001. So 24-year string of losing at Texas. A&M finally breaks it. Jamie Morrison has another great crew down there at A&M this year.
Yeah, not only is it an unfortunate loss to your biggest rival too, but Texas is dominant in conference matches. I mean, they've lost one other match at home since 2010. They lost to Oklahoma in 2014 in Austin, but they had won 79 home straight league matches in a row before losing. It's a Big 12, the SEC now, and that's our first SEC loss too. So it's our first year in the conference. So. So
Texas does not want to go the distance this year. They're 0-3 in 5 setters. And, we praised Texas the last couple of weeks on the show. They've been rolling. They've been sweeping teams. I still think they're not really quite sure what they want to do at their setter position. They ran some 6-2, and just you never think you would say this about Texas, but they might be a pin hitter or so short this year. Maddie Skinner's great, but Reagan Rutherford hasn't been lighting it on fire. They've been trying Devin Hanahawai. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. And she was not, lighting the scoreboard up either. And congrats to Texas A&M for picking up that big win over Texas. Number 9, Kansas goes and gets a big sweep over number 21, Utah, 16, 21, and 22. I forget about the Jayhawks sometimes because I'm not Big 12 focused this year now that Texas isn't in the Big 12, but they're a top 10 team. I'm not as familiar with the Jayhawks this year, but Davis had 11 kills and hit 429. They've got a good setter this year who had a double-double in this match against Utah. And once again, service pressure. Utah commits 13 service errors, which is not going to help you beat a good team like Kansas.
No, but yeah, Kansas leads. They're undefeated in Big 12 play too, so they're atop the league too. But there's a lot of kind of like second tier teams too. I mean, Utah's one of them, and then Baylor and TCU. They're also kind of that second tier of the Big 12, and Baylor beat number 18 TCU in 5 sets, 15-8 in that fifth. Elise McGee had 30 kills on 61 attacks. She hit 328. Barrett Frazier had 45 assists and 17 digs. McGee actually out-hit Melanie Parra, who had 24 kills at 350. So it's a slugfest between those two Texas programs too. But the other rated match will kind of close out our national roundup. North Carolina, number 25. They're an up-and-comer team. They only have.
This is their first time in the poll, I think, this week. The first time in several years that they were ranked.
Yeah, number 25, they knock off Florida State, won another 5-setter, 15-9. North Carolina hit 421 in that 5th set, and Florida State just struggled and hit 0. So good for them. They got Melanie Schaffmaster, the Mayberry Schaffmaster, the sister of Melanie. She had 17 kills, 17 digs. So good night for her.
The lesson here is, I guess, only Nebraska can get out hit by at least 200 points in game 5 and still find a way to win it. 22 kills, 10 digs for Koenig for FSU in a losing effort. And congrats to Kirsten Bernthal Booth, who got her 600th career win when Creighton went up and beat Georgetown on Friday. The Blue Jays also swept Seton Hall. Creighton, as expected, rolling through the Big East. The Blue Jays have now swept 7 straight matches. So I mean, we'll keep an eye on their RPI. There's not a lot that they can do just from the way it's going to be on the schedule. But like the added pressure for Creighton now is like, not only can you not drop a match, you can't drop sets. Like, the committee's going to side eye you. I'm like, oh, you dropped a set 28-26 to St. John's. Well, what's wrong with you? So like Creighton's kind of fighting their battle of legitimacy to the selection committee. Like every week they're out there, and so far so good.
They need to root for more chaos. They need to see Penn State lose. They're not going to be tough to catch. Whoever the Big Ten winner is, and probably whoever the ACC winner is, going to be a regional host too. But they need more chaos amongst the other teams of whoever finishes second from the Big Ten or second from the ACC. A couple more losses, so they need some help if they want to host regionals as well.
Absolutely. Hey, we've been watching a lot of great volleyball on television this year, and every time you hear a match that Paul Sunderland does, to me, it's like when Brett Musburger was calling a college football game. Like, it's big time. It feels important when this guy is behind the mic, and we were very lucky to sit down with Paul for a little bit this week. He was on the road. I think we got him when he was getting ready to call Penn State and
Penn State UCLA. That's who he used.
Penn State UCLA. He's a California guy. I think he lives in LA or close by, so he got to be there. But then he also went out and watched the Purdue Wisconsin match and called that one as well. He's the voice of the Olympics. He's called plenty of Nebraska matches over the year. You'll hear him calling the Final Four again this season, and he was kind enough to give us some time. So let's move into rotation 4 and our interview with Paul Sunderland. and we are so pleased to have our next guest on Volleyball State. If you have watched a big-time volleyball match on television in this country over the last 10, 15 years, you are familiar with Paul's face and Paul's voice. Paul's also a wonderful player once upon a time, a member of the gold medal winning 1984 U.S. Olympic men's volleyball program. But for all intents and purposes on our show today, he is the voice of American volleyball on television. Wow. Paul Sunderland, thank you so much for being on Volleyball State.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and those kind words. You said 10 or 15 years. How about 25 or 30? But we won't age me too much prematurely.
Well, you bring up that time frame, and the sport has just kind of exploded on television. I will say in the last 10 or 15 years, it certainly existed on television 25 years ago, but my goodness, the number of matches you can now watch on a streaming service or a television platform. I was up late last night watching the end of Texas A&M.
How about that?
And you can watch, smaller conference volleyball on a streaming platform if you want. Now, It wasn't like that, 10 or 15 years ago, was it? You maybe got a couple matches a week on TV.
Yes, a couple of matches a week would be a big number 10 or 15 years ago. But with the advent of the Big Ten Network, the ACC Network, the SEC Network, they all need programming. And what do you know? Volleyball is a pretty darn fun game to watch. It's very athletic, and it's getting better all the time. And the USA women have had a tremendous amount of success. I think that helps to drive it somewhat. Although I do think that there is a disconnect between what happens at the Olympic Games and at the club and high school level and the collegiate level, because everybody has their own priorities. I would like to see us going forward. I want a life-size picture of Jordan Larson in every gym in America, not just in Nebraska. And, 5 straight medals in 5 straight Olympic Games. No other women's program can say that. But at the collegiate level, it has been growing exponentially, and I've been along for the ride. I do the easy lifting. I show up, I prepare, I talk, I call the game, and then I fly off to the next. The coaches through all these decades, I mean, look at the Big Ten and the tenure of coaches, and look around the country, the coaches that have really done the heavy lifting for years and years and years to help elevate their sport, elevate themselves, elevate their professional lifestyles, and good for it. And the sport, I think, is in a really, really good place, but there's no time for complacency. And everybody has to keep pulling in the same direction. And boy, the quality of play there used to be 5 or 6 teams that really played at an elite level. Now there are 25 or 30. Again, you can turn on Big Ten Plus, you can turn on ESPN Plus, you can stream, you can look at all the other networks that I mentioned previously, the Big Ten Network, and you can see teams playing at a very, very high level. It's really been fun to watch. Yeah. I wish I was a lot younger, because the ride is only going to get better. I'm almost done.
Oh, I'll say that. You mentioned kind of the progress the sport's made. There was another milestone this past weekend when NBC broadcast for their first college volleyball game. You were on that call. You've called a lot of matches for NBC. NBC's home of the Olympics, but what is the significance of having a regular season college volleyball match on NBC?
I think it's very significant, and I think it's a further indication of where the sport is and where it's going. And that's exactly the question that I asked my partner, Holly McPeak, when we came on the air. Mm-hmm. And ABC has done that as well. ESPN has been a leading juggernaut in terms of continuing to elevate the coverage of the sport. I've been back with ESPN. This is my 2nd or 3rd time back during my 35-year career, going away to Fox, going away to NBC, and back with ESPN. And it was very rare when I came back to ESPN after the London Olympics that a match would be even on ESPN2. Mm-hmm. Now we have multiple matches on Sunday, week after week after week on ESPN. And you both know that the NCAA championships were on ABC. We've had a regular season match on ABC for the very first time. So the bandwagon is getting very crowded, and it's a good thing to see.
We do want to.
But it's because, and I'm sorry to interrupt, it's because of the level of play. Mm-hmm. I mean, the level just keeps getting better and better and better. And I was talking to some friends of mine at my local gym that I've been going to for 25 years. And and we talk about a lot of things, but they're just captivated with the beauty and the athleticism of the sport right now. And and not because of me, but because they're just sports guys and gals. And a lot of them are, hey, I was watching Ohio State and Nebraska. Really? Yeah. And I read that the numbers for that match were pretty darn good. So I hope you're going to see more.
We do want to ask you about some USA volleyball stuff here in just a bit,
Sure.
but I would like to explore that sort of the question you've brought up about the level of play in college. It just seems to be elevating, even from when I started covering the sport maybe 15 or so years ago regularly. What are the biggest areas, the biggest advancements that you've seen that has brought us to where the level of play is right now?
Well, I think a lot of dual or multi-sport athletes are choosing volleyball. There are many, many examples of that. Dana Retke is an example of that. I think she was Miss Illinois basketball and volleyball. She chose volleyball. And there are a number of highly talented athletes that are choosing volleyball. Not to disparage basketball at all. It's in a pretty good place thanks to Caitlin Clark and others, as you know full well from covering the Big Ten. But I think the training that players are receiving at the club level is improved. As you know, as human beings, we continue to advance in our training and nutrition and weight training and plyometrics and all the rest. I mean, I saw Andy Jackson in person for the first time in Columbus, and my jaw was dropping. I mean, this is an incredibly talented athlete. And then Harper Murray, and you can go right around the Big Ten, you can go around the Big 12, you can go around the SEC, you can just go, wow. I mean, they're just players and lots of players getting lots of opportunities. And so that's a long-winded way of saying that, like in almost every sport, training is better, coaching is better, opportunities are better. There are 2 pro leagues now in the United States and 3 if you include Athletes Unlimited. Jordan Larson is a perfect example of how you can not forgetting about, but adding on to what she did as an Olympian, four times a medalist, 2 silvers, a bronze and a gold. And a lot of people forget the first ever world championship in 2014, but she had an incredible professional career in Russia, in Turkey, in China, just an amazing career. So there are lots and lots of opportunities for volleyball players, and that's important.
For sure. You mentioned the chance to see Andy Jackson, Harper Murray play last weekend. What was your overall takeaways from watching Nebraska as a team in person for the first time this year?
Well-trained, athletic, disciplined, quality setter, fantastic libero. I mean, we're getting ready for the World Series, right? Go Dodgers! But you got to be strong. They always say you got to be strong up the middle, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Lexi Rodriguez and Bergen Riley make Nebraska pretty strong up the middle, and then they have lots and lots of weapons. Merritt Beeson is an outstanding opposite. You know, Nebraska is where they are for very, very good reason. I think Bergen was exceptional, but Andy Jackson is a remarkable from my small sample size in person. I'm not going to overstate the case, but a couple of slides that she hit were, let's just call it unique. Very, very unique, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, Terry Pettit used to John Baylor, the longtime radio voice of Nebraska volleyball.
I know John.
Talk about this, about, why did they win that point? And Terry Pettit would say geometry. They were able to create angles that were undefendable. Maybe it's a little bit of a chicken or egg type thing, but more matches are appearing on television now. It's giving a lot of broadcasters opportunities, but we're seeing the crowd size also at the live matches beginning to go up. And you've called some matches with, packed houses in large arenas. You're going to see probably another one when you do UCLA, Penn State, but Purdue just brought 15,000 people to Mackey Arena for their match against Indiana last weekend. Does that help you when you're doing a broadcast? Does it raise your level of performance, you feel like, or do you feel like the atmosphere that's kind of happening around you doesn't really affect the broadcast that much?
You know what it does? It makes me close my mouth much more often because one of the great lessons, I've had some tremendous mentors here in Los Angeles, in Vin Scully and Chick Hearn and several others, Bob Miller with the Kings. When you have an atmosphere like that, the best thing you can do is stop talking. And, television is a team sport as well. We have a director that can capture the emotion of not only the players, but the audience and the coaches. And so he's cutting from one camera to the next, and the producer is bringing in replays to enhance that circumstance. And so I've learned through the years that, just let it happen and be quiet. And it will be the less of me and the more of 14,000. It was actually 14,876 at Mackey Arena at Purdue. And I know we're going to have another sellout against Wisconsin on Saturday. And Holly McPeak and Heather Cox and I will be there. And hopefully I'll be very quiet because the crowd won't be.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked a little bit of kind of everything that's going on in the match too. Jeff and I had a very spirited discussion last week about the pace of play, about how sometimes, you get these great crowds, and we see a lot at Nebraska too, but then you have these multi-minute long review, and there's just a lot of other things going on. You get to the most crucial points of a match too, and there's timeout. Do you notice the pace of play when you're calling a match too? And is that something that needs to be addressed, or is it just part of the game?
Yes, and yes. But you watch the Olympics. The challenge system is so superb and so fast and so expensive. Mm-hmm. The equipment alone per court is $175,000, let alone operational costs, setup costs, tear down costs, and all the rest. Now, are there a number of programs in the country that could afford that investment? Yes. But there are many, many, many more that cannot. Mm-hmm. There are 330 schools that play Division I college volleyball, and you can't have one system in one place and one system in the other place because the quality of replay does sometimes predict the outcome. You know it. The touch is the hardest because the frames per second just isn't high enough. Yeah. And in the Olympics now, there's no more lying in volleyball. I couldn't have played because I was the biggest liar ever. My finger would be bent backwards and broken in 3 places, and I'm going like no touch. But now the players call the touch on themselves to speed things up because they know that the review system is virtually fail-safe. We're not there yet. I like the fact that the SEC has added Hawkeye. Yeah, that's speeding things up down the line. One of the things, and I really hesitate to criticize the officials because they've got a tough job, but the rules say that, and I'm talking about touch or no touch now, the rules say that in order to overturn the call that was made live, the evidence must be 100% irrefutable. Well, once you've looked at 9 replays, you're looking for something that you're not going to find. Mm-hmm. So, God bless them for trying so hard, but I'm with you. The pace of play is very important. And so it will continue to get better, but I do agree with you. It's a problem. Everybody knows it, and everybody's trying to deal as best they can.
We've been talking a little bit about just kind of the sport growing and having milestone moments on television and bringing that to more people. I don't expect you to remember this, the exact circumstances. You've done so many matches, but I was there at the volleyball Final Four in Kansas City in 2017. And I believe that was the first time that the semifinals were shown on ESPN proper. I could be off on that.
I think you're right.
It led into Sports Center. And I remember getting done after the matches, writing my story, going back to the hotel bar where kind of everyone was hanging out, local media, the ESPN folks. And what I remember was everyone was so excited. You could hear the chatter about, oh my goodness, we led into Sports Center. We did a good number. People were really excited about that. I mean, to me, it felt like, looking back now, it was a turning point to have that kind of platform, to be given that opportunity to show the sport kind of on a platform that has previously really been either reserved for men's sports or college basketball. what kind of turning point was that in your mind to just sort of be able to give the sport a shot in that way and prove that there was an audience for it, that it was viable, that it was television friendly, and that, given the right team of producers and broadcasters, that you could make this really feel like a big deal?
Well, it had been a big deal for a long time, and I do remember that moment. I think Karch and I know Karch and I called that, and if I'm remembering, it was Nebraska, Wisconsin.
It was Nebraska, Penn State in the semi, and then
right,
Florida and Stanford the next match, I believe.
All right, I have to go back. I'm okay. Like you said, so many matches.
Absolutely, and I would not hold you to the specific teams at all. It was just something very unique that I didn't get to experience all the time, and that's what made it stick out to me.
Well, I certainly remember it, and it was a big deal. Where something airs, I mean, you give the Olympics for an example. We did matches on USA, we did matches on MSNBC, we did matches on NBC. It doesn't change anything based on the broadcast platform. But I do remember that being on quote unquote big ESPN, and the numbers drive everything. The reason there's so much on is because people are watching. And I've had some conversations with the programming folks at ESPN who are very bright and really smart about what they put on the air, and when they put it on. And the numbers dictate what's getting on. And NBC thought they could do a good number on a Saturday afternoon against college football, and they did. So NBC has joined that party. Fox is in as well. That may have been a turning point in terms of validating, because the numbers were so good, because, SportsCenter is kind of synonymous with ESPN. And so if they thought that was going to be a good lead in, that's a roll of the dice, and kudos for somebody stepping up and wanting to do that. But then it turns out that it was, in fact, that was the case. And so the numbers have continued to be very good.
Yeah, I was blown away that they even did, the wraparound programming too. They had a live courtside a studio show, I guess we would call it, but it was between the matches, and they never left the arena. And you just left that thinking, okay, if ESPN feels like this can be super big time, and of course they make it, they have a hand certainly in what's treated that way. But, it gave it a kind of legitimacy maybe that people who are not true believers like us three were looking for.
Well, and oftentimes it's individuals who really make the difference that are on the ground. And Pat Lowry, one of my dear friends and a very senior producer at ESPN before she left to go to a different production company, was a big believer in volleyball. And she would have to go because all of the things you talked about cost a lot of money. And she would have to go to the powers that be at ESPN and say, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. She was responsible for putting the beach on ESPN for the first time, and you see what that has become. Maria Suarez followed in her footsteps after Pat. Pat took over all of women's college basketball, and now Erica Galbraith leads the effort at ESPN. And so three very, very strong executive producers who've been fighting for more, fighting for better, and they've been rewarded because people are loving the sport. And if it wasn't doing good ratings, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The fact of the matter is that people are watching and in big numbers.
Yeah. You mentioned one of your broadcast partner, Karch Karai, also served as the head volleyball coach for the women's national team too. You got a great opportunity to call them back in 2021 to win the gold medal. I mean, what emotions did you feel in the broadcast? I mean, not only was it gold medal for him and the team, but that was the first one for the United States, and to have him kind of be the head coach, what emotions did you go through and get to experience calling that?
Yeah, that was an incredible memory. Karch is my best friend. We've been together since we began as teammates in 1981, and Karch is my favorite person in the whole world other than my wife. He's just a remarkable human being. So I get goosebumps just thinking about it now. And, by the way, Jordan Larson was MVP and put away gold medal point. It was a really tremendous experience. But you have to, I've had some very, very challenging moments as a broadcaster covering the NBA and Kobe's passing and any number of things, the tragedy that befell Hugh McCutcheon and his family back in 2008, had to deal with that. But this was a joyous occasion and an incredible run for an incredible team. And it couldn't have ended better. The first ever Olympic gold medal. The atmosphere was clearly different because of COVID. There were no fans and also no family, which was a unique experience, sadly, for all the players, because I remember at my Olympic gold medal match, my mother was there, my father was there, my daughter was there. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. But as they tell us at NBC, there's no we, there's the USA. So you got to take the we out of it, no matter who you're calling. But afterwards, we were pretty darn happy.
Well, in this summer, we just came off the Tokyo Olympics, where both the USA women and men's team
Paris,
excuse me,
that's okay.
Earned medals. Every time you wrap up an Olympic cycle, it seems like it's a period of transition. USA Volleyball just named John Speraw as the new president, CEO of USA Volleyball. Coming off of that Olympics and heading into the new cycle, where do you sort of see the state of USA Volleyball, and what are the big focuses that John Speraw is going to have as he takes on this new responsibility?
Well, there are a couple of well, there's certainly a big vacancy, but with John stepping aside. But I think John is going to do an incredible job as the CEO and president of USA Volleyball. And you mentioned transition. Man, oh man, on the men's side and on the women's side, maybe even more, look at the number of roster spots that are going to have to be filled. There's going to be some very interesting news coming up in the next several hours that I can't tell you about, but you'll be interested to see what's going to be announced today, and then going forward for the national teams. There are literally 100 players to choose from on the women's side. We know the participation levels on the men's side is much, much less. But there are some very elite young players that John Speraw knows well, having won the last couple of NCAA championships. And it's going to be a huge turnover on the men's side, and maybe somewhat seamless transition on the women's side. But even as elite and as good as today's collegiate players are, the step up to the next level is not a baby step. It's a green giant step. And so there's going to be some bumps along the way, but it's a very long-winded way of saying a lot more unknowns than knowns going forward for both the men's and women's Olympic teams. Because when I look at the women's side, Dana, Catherine, Avery, maybe Justine will be the only holdovers. So maybe Lauren Carlini, I don't know. No, Lauren announced her retirement. So all new setters. So wow. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, it leaves a lot to decide, and you got a couple of years to do that, and for the big LA Olympics too. And
time goes, it's going to go like that.
Yeah,
there's the VNL, then the World Cup, then the World Championships, then the Olympic qualification. It's going to be all these players are going to be drinking from a fire hose for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are talking to Paul Sunderland. It's Thursday morning right now, Pacific time, out there early for you. We will already know what the news is, so we'll probably next rotation break that news down. So I'm excited to break that down when we record the rest of our podcast. So
okay.
It'd be great. But thanks, Paul, for joining us. You can catch Paul. He does matches on Big Ten Network. Also does Saturday afternoon matches. He's just did Wisconsin and Purdue this past weekend, and also called Penn State and UCLA on last Thursday night. So, Paul, thank you very much for joining us. A pleasure to talk to you, and we look forward to hearing your voice on many more broadcasts.
Thank you for reaching out to me and taking the time. I really appreciate you having me on and everything you're doing to help continue to grow the sport.
Excellent. Thank you. And thanks again to Paul Sunderland for joining us. You can hear him on some Big Ten matches. He also calls NBC as a couple more Saturday afternoon matches, so tune into those. Again, whenever he's on, like Jeff said at the beginning, whenever he's on, it feels like a big-time match, and it just adds a little legitimacy. We're going to move to rotation 5, and we're going to pick up on what Paul hinted at. And I think shortly within an hour or two after we got done talking,
it was definitely like 1 hour after we got done interviewing Paul. This news
been some embargo Thursday mid-afternoon. We got the big news, which when you hear him talk about his relationship with Karch Karai, it was not a surprise that he knew. But Karch Karai, who had been with the women's team, the head coach for the last several quads, 4 quads, 3. He's been with them for 4 quads, head coach for 3. Mm-hmm. But he will be coaching the men now, going back to his roots. He was a men's player in the 84, 88 Olympics, played for them, but he's never coached the men's team, but now he will be guiding them for the LA. Again, full circle moment. He played the LA Olympics in 84, won a gold medal there.
He was a UCLA guy too, just like Paul.
And now he's going to coach the men in the 28 LA Olympics as well too. So I mean, were you surprised? What was your reaction when you saw that news, Jeff?
No, not really. I think USA Volleyball has received some criticism, I guess, about like they're a fairly insular organization. They like to keep it in the family when they can. And so if you're looking around, right, what they do when they had a CEO president opening, they promoted John Speraw, who was the coach of the U.S. men's national team for the last couple cycles, and he moves into the head job as CEO. Well, then they move Karch Karai up from I won't say up. It's potentially a lateral move. They're going to move him from the head coach of the women's program to the head coach of the men's team now. But so the obvious question for a lot of our listeners is, well, now who's going to coach the U.S. women's national team? And if I were to guess, it would be someone who they know within the USA Volleyball circles, somebody who has been an assistant on that program before. That could be someone like Aaron Virtue, the head coach at Michigan now. Alfie Reft, the UCLA head coach, is also was an assistant most recently. Our old friend Tyler Hildebrand has some experience within USA Volleyball, where he was the head coach of the beach programs for a little bit. And then you've got guys who have coached some of the USA developmental programs, the under 21 national teams, someone like Dan Fisher at Pittsburgh, or Jamie Morrison, who's now at Texas A&M. I don't think, I would be surprised, maybe even pleasantly surprised, if they went out and hired someone a little more unexpected, whether that was somebody who has coached a national team program before, just at a different country once upon a time. The U.S. hired Jenny Lang Ping, who is the coach of the Chinese national team now, but who had not coached within the USA Volleyball circles when she was the head coach before. Of course, Hugh McCutcheon, who went on to coach at Minnesota for a while, was also a previous U.S. women's national team coach. I don't know that they're going to revisit that relationship again, but
he did the opposite of the part.
This is what we love to speculate about.
Yeah, because he coached the men and then went to the women.
Right.
Yeah. So the hard part about those names too is, like, you look at a lot of them, like Alfie, Jamie Morrison, and Aaron Virtue, they're all in their second year coaching their collegiate programs too. And I think that they probably want this person in place soon, probably for next May's international schedule. So they could coach through this season too, but are you going to ask someone to step down and step away from a I think it's hard to do it. I don't know. They have done they have done a head coach. Has anyone done a head coach and been at the college program? I guess the men's program did.
In the men's program, they did. John Speraw was the head men's coach at UCLA, and he coached the men's national team. But the men's college season is different. It's more of a spring sport, or you start in
December to
January and it goes through March. It's almost like basketball. And then you come back in the summer and you coach your national team programs. I don't think you can do that with a women's college program. Also, the other consideration is most of these women's college head coaches are making pretty good money.
Yeah.
The sport is being invested in, and there's just fewer and fewer men's college jobs. The women's jobs are actually considered the plum gigs because they pay more and there's more of them. And so, if they were going to do that, they would probably have to wait until this season was over and then hire away a sitting head coach. If you are the head coach of a program like Stanford, if you're Kevin Hambly, how how much in love are you of traveling across the country like twice a month to go play in an expanded conference? I don't know anything about that. I'm just throwing that out there. Do you sniff around for a college coach who maybe is just looking for a change? Or, do you go out there and you hire someone who's just kind of a national team specialist who has coached several other national teams before? But kind of to your point, Lincoln, everyone's looking at the Olympics in 2028 in LA. Well, you don't have time to wait a long time because the national team cycle kind of is nonstop. You're going to have the Grand Prix to play in. You're going to have the World Championships to play in. Volleyball Nations League happens like every year now. Well, and so you have to start building that pipeline.
Yeah, and what we talked about with Paul too is like there's going to be a significant roster turnover too. So that whoever is the head coach needs to get in there and start building up that talent and getting familiar with the personnel that will be available in 2028 as well too. I mean, 2028 is the end goal because we look at international volleyball and the quad cycle kind of, but it's like you just said, it's the work starts in 2025. So.
Yes. So I'm sure this will be announced sometime. I don't think they're going to go 3 months without naming the women's national team coach. I think now that they've got the men's coach named, this could go pretty quickly.
Yeah. And do you think they'll be announced before the Final Four? Is the AVCA convention, is that the grounds that you announce that, or do you hopefully get that done in November?
That's a good question. I think it could be announced in, before the Final Four, especially if it's a sitting college coach. If they don't make the Final Four, you could announce it then, or you kind of drop a bombshell and say, hey, this coach is going to leave their college program at the end of the year to be the next coach of the women's national team. I still don't know that it's going to be a sitting head coach unless it's Jamie Morrison, who, has been an assistant on the USA program before, who has coached a national team, even though they didn't have a lot of success when he was the Netherlands head coach. He kind of checks all the boxes of experience. And, I don't know how deep a run A&M is going to make in the tournament. But so maybe he's my favorite, not like my choice, but the choice that I think that they might do. Of course, they could, completely surprise me and go out and get like Judetti, who has coached several national teams, coached the Serbian national team before, and have them do that.
Yeah, I think there's some other coaches that I don't know. Again, they could come out of left field. I know Michelle Chapman-Smith has been involved a lot. She's kind of coaches the collegiate team. I don't know if does she coach anywhere else? I know.
The name is not familiar to me, so I don't know.
I talked to her last year because she was part of the team that plucked Bergen Riley from her senior year to help. She does a lot with national teamwork, but it's not at the highest level too. Yeah. But there's other assistant coaches too. I mean, Heather Olmsted's been involved with assistant coaching. Taiba Hanif Park, who was with the San Diego Mojo.
Yeah.
Another name too.
A long-time national team player. I think she might have played in 4 Olympics or at least 3.
Yeah. So there's a lot of names too. I mean, people that aren't prominent college coaches. I mean, Heather Olmsted is at BYU. That's prominent, but there's some other names that are involved in the program too that I don't know. If it'd be a surprise if it's not a name that a lot of people have heard of. So, but we can keep speculating. There's a lot of things that we'll see how that plays out. But the other news I want to talk about too is just kind of scheduling news too, but very welcome news. They have tweaked the format of the regional matches this year too. Last year they changed to a day off. So all of the matches were on Thursday, and then all of the regional finals were on Saturday, which makes for a long day. Some of the matches were on ESPN Plus, some were on ESPNU. But like Nebraska had to play a match at 10 a.m. Central, 11 Eastern, and just not great on a Thursday, not great volleyball time. So what they're doing this year is they've spread it out over 4 days. There'll still be a couple afternoon matches, but they'll play 4 total matches on Thursday. They'll start at 1 p.m. Eastern, 2 afternoon matches, and then another session at night, and then do the same thing on Friday. And then that way, both the regional finals will be Saturday night at 4 and 6:30 Central, and then Sunday at 4 o'clock, 6:30 Central. So that should set up for some nice broadcast windows too. Hopefully ESPN2, ESPNU, you will not have to use ESPN Plus to watch regional semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, they're setting it up more like the NCAA basketball tournament where it's all kind of a prime time or, at least midday. I remember having to cover a Nebraska Penn State regional semifinal that started at like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
And just like the athletes all year, you're playing games at maybe you play a noon match once or twice, but usually this is 3:00 or it's 7:00. Your body's just geared to playing more in the afternoon, and that's what the majority of these matches are going to be. I'm looking at the schedule you have on here. There's one 1:00 match, there's one noon match, and those are the earliest ones. Everything else is like 5, 7, or 9.
It would be nice. What they do for basketball is they do, it's all in the evening, but it's on 2 different networks too. That would require ESPN to put ESPN2, ESPNU. None of the matches are overlapping, so it's kind of nice that each one has their own broadcast window. But again, someone's going to have to play. I mean, it's probably going to be an Eastern team. So if it's take, for example, the 4 favorites to host right now, Penn State, Pitt, Louisville, Nebraska, two of those Eastern schools are going to get those afternoon slots because they'll put them at, they'll defer further east. Like won't make a central team play at noon or 11 a.m. So we'll see how it works out. But that's why they hope for some of the Western teams. But the Western teams, Stanford could host, whatever, probably not. But we'll see. But
that's all 3 weeks away into mid-December. We have some more immediate pressing matters coming up this week in the world of volleyball as we move into rotation 6. It's Wisconsin week, and Nebraska is also playing Northwestern.
Yes.
But let's refer to it as Wisconsin week. The Huskers and Badgers will meet on Friday night in Madison. Do I have that right?
Correct. I'll be there. It's exciting. I get to fly onto the Madison airport.
Lincoln's going to hit the road, fly into Madison. It's a beautiful city. I've been there a couple times. Great city for Wisconsin, state capital, party town. We love it. And Wisconsin has themselves a heck of a team. They struggled earlier this year, but they're 9-1 in the Big Ten. I don't know if you can say they're peaking because we're still, when you listen to this, we'll still be in October, but they are improving.
They're playing their best volleyball right now.
They're playing the best volleyball they have right now. And many of the players on Wisconsin's roster that you'll see on Friday night are familiar to Nebraska fans. Of course, Sarah Franklin, the reigning National Player of the Year, is back for another year in Madison. She leads the Badgers with 4.4 kills a set. Didn't really have a great offensive match against Purdue on Saturday. Only had 10 kills, I think, but she's been in double figures like every single match this year. Anna Smrek, who's hitting in the high 300s. She's 6'9". She's an opposite hitter. And all the gang, they're big, they're strong. They have a huge block up at the net, and their freshman setter's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Nebraska fans still have a nightmare about Anna Smrek. They can't wait for her to graduate. She was a freshman during that 2021 national championship game. But yeah, Anna Smrek's huge. Cece Crawford's huge. Devin Robinson's big in the middle. Carter Booth is like 6'7". Julie Orzel's back to playing outside hitter. Great attacker. But like you said, their freshman setter is the linchpin to all of this too. Charlie Furbringer, number 2 overall recruit behind Penn State's Izzy Stark, but she has 10.6 assists per set. And Wisconsin's hitting 300. It was below, and they've surpassed Penn State and Nebraska, and they're now leading the Big Ten in hitting percentage too.
Yeah. But their block is what really raises eyebrows. They're so big at the net. They run out 6'4", 6'7", 6'9". They've got double-digit blocks in 7 straight matches coming into Friday night against Nebraska. We mentioned earlier they had 15 blocks against Purdue in a 3-set match. That's 5 blocks per set. That's really good. And so Nebraska is going to have to attack aggressively, but also wisely. Pick your spots. When can will Bergen Riley run a quick offense? I think this is going to have to be a really good Bergen Riley match. Get her hitters into some one-on-one situations. The middles are going to have to be good. You can't just be out of system because Wisconsin will camp out on your out of system swings. You can't also tip and roll against them unless it's falling because you're just giving them transition chances. And Nebraska finally broke its 10-match losing streak against Wisconsin last year on that 5-setter in Lincoln. But then they turned around and played Wisconsin at the end of the year, and Wisconsin smoked them, hit better than 300. I think it was up around 350, and swept Nebraska and Madison going into the NCAA tournament. Huskers haven't won a game at Wisconsin, haven't won a match, at Wisconsin since 2014, and a lot of those matches have not been close.
I need to double check that. It was 2014 or 2013. I forget. It's been a long time since they've
done it. It's been a decade.
Yeah, but the one area that I think Nebraska could, if Nebraska's looking for hope and how they could do that, is passing. Passing's been a little bit of weakness for the Badgers at times. They've kind of played musical chairs at the libero. Last year, I mean, Julia Orzel played libero. She went from one freshman of the year, then shifted back to being a libero last year when they had Temi Thomas-Alara on the second pin for them, but she switched back to attacking. They really just haven't found an answer. They've kind of, they did, I remember watching the opening matches in Louisville. They had a serving libero and a passing libero too. So it was a different approach, and they really haven't settled on one. But Lola Schumacher, who is a freshman, is kind of the one that's getting a little bit more of the playing time right now. But they've also used Sage Damrow. She's played a little bit too, and Gulse Guchkin, thank you. She's also played libero too. So they kind of have multiple people there too to figure out whoever has the hot passing hand. But if Nebraska's looking for an area they might be able to exploit, passing is as good as you're going to get. It's hard to find one with their attacking and their blocking, but passing is an area where Nebraska could make hay if they serve tough. And
you serve tough, you keep Fierbringer off the net, make her set from the 10-foot line, and then you hope they miss.
Yep.
And you got to dig some balls. It's the old Penn State formula: serve tough and just know you're going to have to dig some balls. Yep. Nebraska also, they don't play Friday, Saturday this week. They play Friday, Sunday. They're on the road again, playing Northwestern. Northwestern is a place where I feel like Nebraska always wins, but Nebraska never plays that well. You know, I feel like Maryland is kind of one of those places as well. It's always kind of a slog, but Nebraska is going to have to play Northwestern 48 hours after playing Wisconsin. Northwestern has a first-year head coach, Tim Nolan. They're struggling this year, 4-13 overall and 2-7 in Big Ten play. That's before we're taping this before Northwestern plays Indiana on Sunday night. Something notable about Northwestern, they are last in the Big Ten in hitting percentage. They're hitting just 182. So Nebraska will be heavily favored in that match. Alexa Rousseau is doing double duty this year. Lincoln, do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, she. I don't know. I guess they play a little bit of a 6-2, so she's leading the team in assists, but it's also second in kills too. So she's
almost like a true 6-2 or a 5-2 if she's sets in the back row, but then maybe is an opposite in the front row. Yeah.
So she's and it's that's not per set average. She is second overall in number of total kills too. So she did a little bit about their leading attacker is Buse Hassan, who is a transfer from South Florida. She was an all-conference player last year too, leading them in attacks. So, but again, this is, I don't know if it's an opposite of a trap game, but it's kind of an emotional bounce back game depending on whatever happens against the Badgers. They'll have to get ready for another. I mean, luckily this game was scheduled to be on Saturday, but after the schedules were released, they moved it back to Sunday. So Nebraska does get a day off, gets to check out the Windy City and get ready for that match.
But it's a noon match too. So they play Wisconsin Friday at 8 p.m. And then, so it's kind of a quick turnaround because they have to play noon on Sunday then against Northwestern. That'll be a BTN Plus special. You'll have to check that out there.
Yep. 2013, I want to make sure, correct the record too. So the Wisconsin's winning streak started in 2014. Nebraska last won in Madison in 2013. So.
All right. That's our show today. If you have not already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe and review. Leave us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to us. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, any other place that you're finding our show. Please subscribe and review. You can also check out the Volleyball State merch at hurrdatsports.com/shop. You can get your Bald Set Spike shirt, your Justice for Libero shirt, your Volleyball State shirt, and all of your favorite Hurrdat apparel. And you can follow us online, interact with the show at Volleyball Pod on Twitter, and email us your questions, your gripes, your segment requests, and your guest ideas at volleyballstate@gmail.com. Plus, you can find me individually on Twitter at @ByJeffSheldon.
Yes, and I am on Twitter at Lincoln_VB. You can find usually a link to all of my written work from there. So find out.
Plus your videos, your post-match videos,
everything. That's the number one spot to get all your volleyball stuff information outside of this wonderful show too. So thanks to Kahm Broham for producing today's show. Thanks to Hurrdat Sports. Follow them on social media and YouTube. And thank you for living in the volleyball state.